Welcome back to the Grace-Filled Classroom. I'm so glad you're here for episode 3. If you tuned in for episode 2, you heard us break down what learning styles are, why they matter, and how they show up in both educational and professional settings. If you haven't listened yet, don't worry, you can always go back and check it out later. And if you're new here, welcome. I'd love for you to hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. I have a lot of great things in the works. In the last episode, I also shared a free learning styles quiz to help you begin identifying your own learning preferences or those of your child, student, or coworker. If you haven't taken it yet, it's a great starting point. But even if you're not sure where to begin, here's a powerful and simple first step. Just observe. Pay attention to how the people around you process information. What lights them up? What frustrates them? That alone can give you valuable clues about how they are wired to learn. But before we get started today, let me ask you something. What comes to mind when I say the word classroom? Do you picture 4 walls, a whiteboard, a few desks under fluorescent lights? Don't get me started on those fluorescent lights from a sensory perspective. I can't be alone on this. Now, what if I told you the real classroom isn't confined by walls at all? The world is our classroom. Whether it's a walk through the woods, a car ride conversation, a kitchen experiment, or a heart-to-heart with a coworker, learning is always happening everywhere. Because a classroom is not just a space, it's a mindset. And when we adopt that mindset, we begin to see every moment as an opportunity to grow, connect, and teach with grace. Today we're moving from theory to practice. We're talking about what learning styles look like in everyday life and how you can support the learners around you, whether they're toddlers, teens, or adults. Whether you're homeschooling, parenting, teaching, or working with a team, this episode will give you tools you can use in every environment. I'll be sharing real-life examples, practical strategies, and encouragement to help you teach, lead, or parent with more intention, confidence, and grace. We're going to do a really quick recap. What are learning styles? And I'm not going to spend too much time here because we discussed all this on the last episode. So go back and listen if you haven't yet. But just as a refresher, learning styles are the way people best receive, process, and retain information. We focused on 4 primary styles: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and reading-writing. Most people are a blend of these, but often 1 or 2 stand out. When we tune into those preferences, we can better support how someone is wired to learn. And when we teach or present information in a multimodal way, we're far more likely to reach every learner in the room. This is especially powerful when speaking to a group, leading a training, or teaching a classroom full of different learning preferences. No one will ever have a group of learners that all learn the same way, which is why presenting in a multimodal way is so important if we want to reach every learner. Think about it this way. Studies suggest that when we only present material using auditory methods, we reach about 30% of learners. Let that sink in for a moment. And honestly, how do most teachers and leaders train? Typically, it's by speaking. And only hitting 30% of the audience is not our goal, so what are we doing? And there's no judgment here, but when we know better, we do better, right? Simply adding visual elements increases that reach to around 60%. That's double. When we incorporate auditory, visual, and reading-writing strategies, we may engage up to 80% of our audience. But that still leaves 20% of learners. What do you think would happen if we intentionally include all 4 styles, including kinesthetic? Yes, we can reach closer to 100% of our learners. And isn't that the goal? To meet every learner where they are and ensure everyone has the opportunity to connect, grow, and succeed? Isn't that our job as educators and leaders to create environments where all learners feel seen, supported, and set up for success? No pressure, right? Doesn't sound overwhelming at all? I know, as teachers and leaders, we have a lot on our plate, but really this isn't about doing everything perfectly. It's about doing the next right thing with the learners in front of you. That's why I always emphasize, to be an effective educator and leader, you have to actually understand who your audience is and how they learn. And you don't have to do it alone. Ask your colleagues, a friend, or even your students on advice on how they like to learn best. Let your students take the learning styles quiz to help them and you understand how they learn. And the good news is, it's not as hard as you might think to incorporate all 4 learning styles. With just a little planning and intentionality, you can begin layering your approach in simple, powerful ways. And here's something important to keep in mind. Even if you're using a boxed or prepackaged curriculum, that does not mean you're locked into a one-size-fits-all approach. Most curriculums are designed to hit the basics, which often means they focus heavily on just 1 or 2 learning styles. Typically, yep, you guessed it, auditory or reading and writing. And that's totally okay. It gives you a solid foundation to build from, but it also leaves room to grow. So what would it look like to take what's already there and make it your own? Maybe that read aloud could be paired with some sketching or movement. Maybe that worksheet turns into a collaborative game with some manipulatives. Maybe you pause and say, let's act this out, or turn and teach a partner. Here's the truth. The curriculum is a tool, it's not a rule. You know your learners best. And that gives you full permission to adapt, adjust, and bring it to life in a way that works for them. If you'd like to go even deeper, I've created a free downloadable resource to help you reflect on today's episode. It's a grace-filled teacher reflection sheet designed to guide you through identifying learning styles, planning a multimodal lesson, and praying intentionally over the learners in your life. I'll have the link to download this reflection sheet in the description. Now that we've recapped the core learning styles and talked about why using all 4 makes such a difference, especially when you're teaching or leading a group, let's get practical. What does all of this actually look like in real life for our learners? Let's walk through each learning style and talk about how it might show up in real life and what you can do to support it. Then we'll talk about blending them and making something I like to call multimodal magic. First off, visual learners, who absorb information best when they can see it. They tend to remember faces, colors, diagrams, and charts, and may often ask to see it written down. I am a very visual learner myself, and I will never forget a face, but I'm terrible at remembering names. I need to write down or see what a presenter is saying. Without this, honestly, most words will go in one ear and right out the other. These learners might doodle during class or remember where something was written on a page. So let them doodle and let them write. At home, they thrive with chore charts, color-coded calendars, illustrated stories. In a classroom setting, use anchor charts, graphic organizers. Visual timers are huge, and videos really speak to them. There's nothing wrong with a video to go along with a lesson. Not all screen time is bad. In fact, many people need to see this visual representation in action to fully understand. And in professional developments and environment settings, these learners will benefit greatly from slides, flowcharts, a visual timeline. And from a faith perspective, God often speaks through visuals, whether it's a rainbow, a sunset, or a beautiful moment in nature. Auditory learners process information best through sound. They remember what they hear, they enjoy discussions, and may repeat things aloud to reinforce understanding. These are the learners who might hum a tune to recall a concept or prefer to talk through their ideas with someone else. You can support them at home or in the classroom setting by reading aloud together, listening to audiobooks, or turning lessons into songs. Think for a second about song lyrics you remember from your childhood. There's a reason you still remember those lyrics so vividly. When we teach with songs and rhymes, it reinforces a concept in a way that's easy to remember. This can be used all across different subjects. Give them space to verbalize their thoughts. Use a turn and learn method where students turn to a partner close by and share their takeaway or a question if they still have it. It opens up the opportunity for discussion, collaboration, and time for these auditory processors to learn and process better. Another idea is to let them record themselves. Let them record you in your presentation or lesson and let them listen back. In fact, recording yourself teaching and watching it back can be a very humbling experience. In professional settings, they thrive in collaborative discussions, team meetings, or even through listening to podcasts like this. Scripture says that faith comes by hearing, and auditory learners often experience deep spiritual connection through the spoken word of God. Next, let's talk about my favorite learning style that, in my opinion, is typically left out of lessons and presentations the most. Kinesthetic learners. They need to move, touch, and experience to truly understand. They may be the wigglers, you know the ones, the hands-on builders, or the ones who remember things better after physically acting them out. Give them opportunities to cook, build, or act out stories at home. In the classroom, they thrive with role play, manipulatives, or movement-based learning games. In professional settings, they benefit from interactive simulations, field experiences, hands-on team projects. They can't just watch and learn, hear and learn. They need to do and learn. And let's be honest here. How much of this do we really see going on in the traditional classroom and lecture hall training sessions? Why is that? God designed our bodies to move. He designed them with a purpose. And kinesthetic learners often connect through movement. Worship, service, and action can be meaningful ways that they engage both with learning and with their faith. Reading and writing learners prefer information through written words, like we talked about before. They love making lists, journaling, reading, writing, and writing things down to remember and process them. At home, you might support them with devotionals, prayer journals, or written to-do lists. In school, give them a variety of note-taking tools, handouts, reading materials, and structured worksheets. Give them time to work on those things. In the workplace, allow time for reflective writing, clear email instructions, and written feedback. Give them an outline of your presentation and let them follow along and write as needed. God's Word is a beautiful resource for these learners. They often connect with Scripture most powerfully through personal reading and reflective journaling. So now that we've unpacked each of the 4 learning styles, maybe you're starting to notice that your child, student, or team member doesn't fit neatly into just one of these categories, and that's 100% normal. Most people are a mix, which is why teaching in a blended or multimodal way can make such a huge difference. And like I said, it's not as hard as you think. Let's talk about how to do that in a simple, approachable way. Almost all learners will benefit from a layered approach. For example, if you're teaching a Bible verse or a meaningful quote, you can support a visual learner by showing them a graphic or image that brings it to life. For your auditory learners, say it out loud together. Or even better, turn it into a song or a chant. Kinesthetic learners need to move. Try adding hand motions or actions to go along with the words. And your reading-writing learners, let them write the verse down, copy it into a journal, or draw something that reflects its meaning. I want you to take a second and visualize how you can shift from just auditory teaching to including all 4 learning styles. What does that look like? What are some small tweaks you can make to include them all without adding a lot of extra work for yourself? And look, You don't have to include every learning style every single time, but when you blend 2, 3, or even all 4, that's what I like to call multimodal magic. It's that sweet spot where different kinds of learners light up and the message really clicks, because you've given them more than one way to connect. And the best part? It doesn't have to be complicated. It just takes a little intention. When we approach learning this way with grace and purpose, we create space for every person to feel seen, valued, and supported in how they're uniquely wired. While teaching, one of the most effective ways I supported multiple learning styles was through centers or stations. Before we even got to centers, I always started whole group with a short mini lesson, and I mean short, and I made sure to layer it. I used visual aids like picture books, KWL charts, graphs, or anchor charts to help them visually process the theme. At the same time, they were getting the auditory piece, hearing me explain and ask questions aloud. And I almost always included some form of movement, even during a read aloud. I might pause and invite a few students up to act out a scene, or hand motions to represent ideas. I'd also have whiteboards out so they could draw, doodle, or write while I was teaching. And just like that, multimodal magic teaching complete. After that mini lesson, we'd transition into centers that were already set up around the room. Each one tied into the overall theme, but each was intentionally designed to support a different learning style. One might involve reading and writing, like copying vocabulary words, labeling pictures, or journaling. Another was hands-on, like sorting or building something with visuals, manipulatives. One center might include audio, like listening through headphones or having a partner discussion. And another would include movement or role play to bring concepts to life. Each child would rotate through all of the centers. So by the time they finished, they had engaged with every learning style in some way. And here's the key. I wasn't always front and center. I was moving around, observing how students were engaging, asking questions, jumping into conversations. Sometimes I'd pull a small group. Other times I'd check in one-on-one with a student who needed some support or encouragement. It was such a simple but powerful way to ensure every learner had a chance to connect with the material in a way that worked for them. Did it take a little more prep? Sure, but it made our day go so much smoother. I wasn't stuck up in front squawking at them all day. They were engaged, focused, and actually learning. And here's something I want you to hear. Stations are not just for younger learners. Stations can be powerful tools for any age group. Whether you're in a classroom, leading a training, or running a professional development session, rotating through different modalities gives everyone a chance to engage in the way that fits them best. It might sound like a lot, but once the rhythm was there, it flowed. The kids knew what to expect. And I wasn't teaching one thing in 4 different ways. I was offering 4 access points to help every learner connect. This kind of layered instruction wasn't just more effective, it was more joyful. I saw collaboration. I saw relationships being built within the learning community. I saw light bulbs go on. I saw confidence grow. And I realized honoring how people are wired doesn't complicate the lesson, it clarifies it. And here's something else worth mentioning. Play-based learning isn't just for littles either. Older students and even adults benefit from playful, exploratory approaches that invite curiosity and interaction. Whether it's a game, simulation, role play, or a hands-on challenge, playful learning taps into engagement and joy. When people are having fun, they're more open to learning and more likely to remember what they've learned. The same is true with my daughter now. Sometimes I see her light up when she hears a song or watches a video. Other times she just wants to write, draw, or create something with her hands. It's a reminder that learning shifts and flexes over time. And as those learning styles shift, deepen, or even change altogether, it invites us to lean in with curiosity and compassion. It's not just about adapting our teaching, it's about celebrating the uniqueness of every learner at every stage. Which brings us to something even more foundational, why this matters from a faith perspective. Psalm 139 says, "We are fearfully and wonderfully made," and that includes our learning preferences. I touched on this in episode 2. Because the God who knit us together in the womb didn't just form our bodies, He shaped our minds, our personalities, and even the way we process and respond to the world around us. Isn't that amazing? He didn't create us all to learn the same way. He created us to reflect His creativity, complexity, and diversity. It's a reminder that every person is made in the image of God. And when we take the time to understand how they learn, we're not just helping them succeed academically or professionally, we're honoring God's intentional design. When we pause to recognize and honor that in others, it's not just good teaching or leadership. It's truly an act of worship. It's a way we reflect God's love by affirming the unique wiring He placed in each learner. Whether you're guiding a child, leading a meeting, or offering support to someone in need, choosing to meet them where they are is one way we live out the heart of Christ. And here's the grace-filled truth. We don't have to do it perfectly. We do our part, and we trust God to fill in the gaps. Because He's not asking us to be flawless, He's asking us to be faithful. And what does that really mean, asking us to be faithful? It means God isn't measuring us by perfection. He's inviting us into partnership. He's not waiting for us to have it all figured out. He simply asks us to show up, trust Him, and walk in obedience, even when we feel inadequate or unsure. Being faithful means showing up with a willing heart. Yes, even when you're tired. Trying again when something doesn't land the first time. And why not try it a different way, right? Using a different style of teaching. It means choosing grace over guilt when you miss the mark. Trusting that your small efforts matter because they're in God's hands. It's rooted in verses like Luke 16:10. Whoever is faithful in little will also be faithful in much. God does not need perfection to do something beautiful. He just needs our faithfulness. Because when we faithfully sow seeds of understanding, encouragement, and grace, He's the one who brings the growth. And here's the beautiful part. When we embrace multimodal teaching, not only do our learners grow, but we grow too. We grow in patience because it takes time to learn what makes each person light up. We grow in creativity as we try new ways to reach hearts and minds. We grow in empathy because we begin to see the world through someone else's lens. And we grow in faith because we're trusting God to use our imperfect efforts to make an eternal impact. This isn't just about education. It's about transformation. Multimodal teaching pulls us out of autopilot and reminds us we don't have to keep teaching the same way just because that's how it's always been done. Tradition isn't bad, but it should never be a substitute for intention. It makes us better listeners, more thoughtful leaders, and more compassionate mentors. And as we shift from a one-size-fits-all to how has God uniquely wired this person, we become more aligned with the heart of Jesus, the teacher who met people right where they were and spoke in parables, stories, questions, and touch. That's the kind of educator I want to be, and I believe that kind of grace-filled teaching changes everything. So, what do we actually do with all of this? I have a practical challenge for you this week. I want you to take what we've talked about and put it into practice. Start by simply observing the learners around you, your kids, your students, your team members, yes, even yourself. How do they naturally engage with the world? What seems to frustrate them? What brings them to life? Can you identify a possible learning style or two just based on what you notice? Do they light up when they get to draw, build, talk it out, quietly write things down, or move? Ask yourself this. Take some time to reflect. Am I truly offering different access points for them to learn, or do I tend to default to just one? Then try something small. Choose one new way to engage them this week. Maybe it's sharing a video, encouraging a partner discussion, adding movement, or offering a journal prompt. See how they respond. See what sticks. See what God shows you in the process. And don't be afraid to let your students or coworkers in on what you're trying. Let them know you're incorporating something new because you're still learning too. As educators, leaders, and parents, we're not meant to have it all figured out. We are growing right alongside the people we serve. And when we're open about that journey, we model humility, curiosity, and courage, the very qualities we hope to cultivate in others. And for those of you preparing to head into the next school year, here's one extra challenge. Can you plan just one lesson ahead of time that's intentionally multimodal, meaning it includes all 4 of the learning styles? Let it start with a read aloud and offer students a notebook or a wipe clean board so they can jot down notes, doodle, or sketch what they hear, supporting both the visual and reading-writing learners in a natural, low-pressure way. Incorporate photos or visuals to deepen their understanding. Encourage students to turn and talk to a partner to activate auditory processing. And please, add some movement in. Invite them to act out a scene or create motions that match the learning. Is there a lesson in the curriculum that you've been teaching for years that you could edit to involve some more movement, some more different learning styles, something that reaches all students? Listen, we weren't designed to sit still for a long period of time. In fact, a lot of people process and retain information better when their bodies are engaged. Honestly, I did almost all my brainstorming for this episode while walking on my walking pad because I'm someone who needs to move, and I want to model that it's okay to learn differently even as an adult. To help you get started on this planning, don't forget to grab the teacher reflection and planning sheet that I created for you. It's a simple, printable resource that can help you think through learning styles, brainstorm lesson ideas, and reflect on what's working as you go. It doesn't have to be complicated to be effective. It doesn't have to take a lot of time either, just intentionality and a willingness to consider different ways learners engage. Just one lesson can show you how powerful this approach can be. If you give this a try, I'd love to hear how it goes. What did you notice? What worked well? Or even surprised you? Let's share ideas with each other here. Feel free to send me a message or leave a comment. Your ideas, stories, and questions help shape future episodes and build this grace-filled community. If this episode encouraged you, would you share it with someone who teaches, leads, or parents? And don't forget to take the Learning Styles quiz if you haven't already. It's a quick way to better understand yourself and those around you. And remember, it's not about labels, it's about love. When we teach, lead, or support others in the way they learn best, we're not just helping them grow, we're reflecting the love of Christ. I see you, I value how you were created, and I'm willing to meet you there. Because that's where grace lives, and that's where growth begins. And remember, progress over perfection. If there's something specific you'd love to hear more about, I truly would love to know. Send me a message or drop a comment. Your insight helps shape this space. If this episode encouraged you, would you do me a favor? Please like, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Whether you're teaching, parenting, or leading, I want to keep equipping you with tools that meet you right where you are, with faith, fun, and flexibility. Thanks for being here, friend. May God guide you with wisdom and fill your days with peace. I'll see you next time in the Grace-Filled Classroom.